Hello, welcome back to this week's episode of Coinscrum's Meet the Founders series. I'm thrilled to welcome Arnab Naskar, co-founder and business lead at Stokr. Welcome, Arnab.
Nice to be here, Paul. Nice to meet you also.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us. So we're here to look at your new platform, Stokr, which is a securities token issuance platform. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. Before we do, we like to hear from our guests how they kind of got into crypto, what their backgrounds are before they entered this crazy world. So should we start with that? What were you doing before you found crypto, and how did you discover it?
So Paul, my background is from the legal side. So I am a qualified lawyer in India. I was working as a professional lawyer. And then when I moved to Germany, so currently I'm based in Germany. When I moved in Germany back in 2015, I started my academics career. And slowly, I got into this rabbit hole of crypto and just sucked into it and stayed here for quite some years now.
Par for the course. Once you're in, you don't get out.
Yes.
They say. So obviously you've been in the space for a while, and there's been loads of opportunities materialize over the last few years, especially. And like any founders, sport for choice in terms of what direction you might choose to go in if you have, you're looking to explore setting up companies in the space. Why did you decide on Stokr and the securities tokens market in particular?
Okay, that's a very interesting story, because I think what got me into crypto is actually Bitcoin. I still believe heavily into Bitcoin because for me, I'm coming from an Indian background where the INR is facing a lot of inflation risk. You have banking gateways are not all the time perfect. But what really intrigued me about Bitcoin at that point of time was the element of P2P transfer, right? I was actually in the university and I was buying gaming equipments. And I think now with the GameStop saga, you can see how it can be relevant. So I was actually using Bitcoin to buy gaming equipment. So I was converting Steam keys into Bitcoin and then buying gaming equipments. Mm-hmm. That's why I got into Bitcoin, because at that point of time, I didn't have access to get a credit card. I didn't have access to get PayPal, but I had access to get Bitcoin and I was buying it. Mm-hmm. In 2017, when I met my founders and, I was thinking about a very interesting topic is about programmable money, right? And Bitcoin definitely for me is a store of value, but it also has a, payment function, right? And one of the very intriguing aspect is programmable money. We can think of the layer 2 and other layers on Bitcoin like Liquid and Lightning. You can think of element of smart contracts and those kind of things coming. But so much innovation which we saw in the payment ecosystem, we have not seen so much innovation in the capital market ecosystem. And that's what actually, I would say the entire inspiration came from, how to make the capital markets more accessible and less frictionless, right? Where we see right now, it is very relevant. And today, when we are recording this on 29th of January of 2021, we see the entire Robinhood saga going on, right? Where Robinhood restricted specific stocks because, it was squeezing the short sellers. And Robinhood can do it because it's an intermediary. It's a middleman in the process. But we need to have a capital market where you have limited amount of middlemans, not so many layers. And that's where Stokr becomes relevant, is to create a capital market which is more accessible, which is more open, and you have limited middleman in the process.
Yeah, I guess that's a good example, especially with Robinhood being at the center of all of this. And, their pitch was that it was democratizing markets for, retail customers to put them on a level playing field. And I think it's shown that it's anything but. And I guess a good analogy for that was, PayPal's early vision, where they thought that they'd be able to democratize money and it would become borderless. And because of the reliance and ties to existing laws and regulations, they didn't have those freedoms. And what we're seeing on the other side, which I guess is you guys sitting in between with the DeFi movement, that that does potentially open that story up, and potentially over time will become something that's deliverable. But I guess securities tokens, while generally exploring utilizing similar technologies, it does very much sit in the regulated space, which is a feature and a positive for people working on this. At least there's clear guidelines. Before we come on to that, do you want to tell us first about maybe a little bit about the rest of your team and the product itself? Let's tell us what Stokr actually is.
Okay, so I will just give a brief background first on Stokr and then coming to the team. So Stokr is it's quite unique to what we have seen in other product in the security token market. I think we spoke also on personal level a number of times, and we started the entire journey of Stokr back in 2018. So we are already in the market for quite some time. And Stokr, how we wanted to position Stokr is it's a kind of a marketplace. It's a marketplace where you can bring any kind of financial assets. It's much more what we are talking over here is alternative financial assets in a tokenized form and in a marketplace where investors and issuers both can interact. So Stokr wants to position itself as a marketplace. But as you know, in capital markets, we have two layers. One is the primary issuance layer and one is the secondary issuance. Stokr is much more focused on the primary issuance. So we are a marketplace which enables issuers to issue any kind of alternative financing assets in a digital platform. It can be on the blockchain like Ethereum or in networks like Liquid Network. So that's where in crux what Stokr is. And the main vision of Stokr to make it accessible. So it's a platform which is accessible with the limited amount of restrictions, and also a platform that allows you to be your own broker. And that's very key. Is where we're talking about when the capital market innovation that Stokr or security token can bring is the element of the understanding philosophy is you hold your own Bitcoin in your own wallet, the same way you have to have the right or the sovereign right to hold the same Bitcoin or the stocks in your own account. You don't require a broker dealer, you don't require a custodian, you don't require a transfer agent. And that's what Stokr is achieving here in this space.
Okay, that's very interesting. And yeah, just touch on the team a little bit and then we'll come back to this.
So Stokr was founded in 2018 by 4 co-founders. Myself, Arnab Naskar, I am actually managing the business side, business lead and strategic relationships for the company. One of my co-founder, Tobias Seidel, he is based in Luxembourg. He is having more than 12 years plus capital market experience coming from existing capital markets world. And interestingly, actually, I met him in a Munich conference, and he's actually born and brought up in Munich, and then he moved to Luxembourg. And we met and we shared the common vision in 2017. And after 4 months, we actually started the company. And that's crazy because we somehow did not knew each other beforehand, but we somehow had the same vision and same ethos at some point, and that clicked. The same way, I also met my co-founder, another co-founder who is managing the tech side, Lucas Kremer. He's based in Berlin and he's managing the entire tech side. And the fourth co-founder, Leonard Ante, he's based in Hamburg and he's managing the economics and the financial aspects of the company at this point.
Okay, thank you. All interesting. So just moving on, the product's live and we'll come on and talk about that soon, but dealing with the regulated space, as we've mentioned, always comes with certain challenges, especially as the boundaries were being put in place from regulators over a similar time. And I know you've been very active with the European trade body INATBA, and working directly with authorities in Europe as they formulated their regulations. They recently came out with the MICA regulation architecture or infrastructure. So tell us in terms of, what were the challenges in bringing this to market? What licenses did you need? Which ones don't you need? And how were those conversations with regulators?
So the regulatory wise, what Stokr's philosophy is, we only take or approach to a regulator and take a necessary license where we see that this specific license really suits Stokr's need or really can help us to provide services to our customers, be it ventures, be it the investors. So Stokr went to the Luxembourg regulators and we analyzed the Luxembourg regulatory status back in 2018. And we realized that under Luxembourg corporate law, as well as capital market laws, these kind of financial rights can be issued on the blockchain. And that's very interesting, right? You see in Germany right now, it's happening. You see Liechtenstein, but under Luxembourg law, a lot of things, even not in the capital market laws itself, but even in the corporate level are quite interesting. And that's what we wanted to make use of and issue this kind of instruments. And Luxembourg is a European member state. So any offering that is approved prospectus kind of structures that's approved in Luxembourg gets passported to other member states. And that's one advantage. So Stokr is currently also an obliged entity to do KYC, AML on any investor. So that actually gives a very interesting level of support to our customers, that is the companies, raising financing on Stokr, that they can rely on the KYC on Stokr that we are doing on each investors. Also on the payment side, it's very important because when an investor is buying or getting a payouts, they require a seamless payment flow. Being like we are regulated as an agent of a payment institution in France at this point, and that allows us to process euro as well as crypto on the platform. And this is very interesting because you see a lot of other security token platform, they are much more, I would say, like a white label services, where you get the bare tech and then you have to provide all the services on your own and negotiate on your own. But on Stokr, when as an issuer you come, you get all as an end-to-end support, and we provide to make it a seamless experience for you for issuance of any kind of financial instruments like security tokens.
Okay, very good. So just to loop back on a couple of things around the regulation, and you mentioned earlier some of the functions, which I guess this technology is designed to unbundle in many ways. You have all these different roles in the typical trade life cycle for securities trading and settlement in traditional markets. One of those important roles is like the securities depository. And you mentioned transfer agents, and you mentioned, the ability for people to effectively self-custody. But, this being accessible for institutions as a platform, some of them, I guess, don't have permissions to do that right now. And I guess at grand scale, they don't necessarily want to completely self-custody on their ledger and a desk. But what was the regulator's response to that? How do you overcome those requirements? Or are we moving to a model where potentially regulated crypto custodians are able to provide that function?
So right now, like, for example, that's why I think you also saw the debates of the XRP, right? When it got delisted from a lot of exchanges, because exchanges most of the crypto exchanges does not have the necessary license to list tradable securities, right? Financial instruments. Under European law, it's much more like transferable securities. These security tokens usually qualify for. And to have those securities in an exchange, the exchange need to have a specific MiFID license to hold those securities. And as of today, I don't see that many of security token exchange players in the market alive, right? And that's a big challenge for the market itself. So I think like it need to go as a step by step. The first initial step is much more to enable platforms like Ledger, platforms like MetaMask, which are non-custodial, right? Or if you see the green wallet, this kind of non-custodial wallets can actually hold securities fundamentally, right? Because ultimately who are holding those securities, these are the investors by themselves or the companies. And that under current regulatory structure in Luxembourg, it's possible. And that's what we are doing. We currently have around 70 million worth of assets under our management structures. And these are all self-custodied. And investors, this is something very interesting, Paul, which we really see. Investors really understand the risk management processes. It's not something they are, I would say much more sometimes retail investors are much more risk conscious than a lot of family offices and, high net worth individuals and institutions. And this is very interesting because people are evolving, right? With the technology infrastructure, they're evolving. But another interesting thing, Paul, I also want to highlight here, custody is not a big risky situation in crypto like security token. It may be a big risk in Bitcoin because once you lose the Bitcoin, it's gone. But security token cannot lose itself, right? You cannot lose your right to a share in Apple because you lost some document. So there is always a process of any kind of security token can be recovered. In Stokr also, any kind of security tokens you can always recover. So even if you hold in a MetaMask and maybe after 1 month you forget that, you can ask for recovery. There is a small cost and something involved at some point of time. At this point of time, it's free on Stokr. But the idea is you don't have to be so much careful. You can lose it and you can recover at some point.
Right. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, that is the nuance between the kind of native blockchain tokens and digital representations of them. And I guess if we look back through history, we're kind of gone full circle. In the 70s, we went through the whole dematerialization of the whole equities trading and settlement process, which went from bearer instruments and literally physical share certificates to an electronic version, but obviously very centrally managed, to now meeting in the middle where we have bearer instruments again, but they're completely digitized, but they are actually bearer instruments
But I will not say like that, Paul, because when you talk about bearer instrument, the issuer does not know who is holding that, right? Yeah. But in this case of securities, actually, because of the whitelisting, so a blockchain wallet can hold as long as, so blockchain wallet can only hold the securities in their wallet if the wallet is whitelisted with the issuer.
Right.
That way, it's not a bearer instrument actually, because the issuer knows at any given point of time who is holding.
Mm-hmm.
And that also empowers the investor that if the investor wants to trade on a Sunday at 5 p.m., investor can trade.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's restricting, because what happens is the blockchain itself or the smart contract itself acts as a transfer agent, like a delivery versus payment, right?
Yep.
The DVP is happening on the blockchain layer itself with the help of a smart contract.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess that takes us on to my next question, because looking a bit further forward, you mentioned, it's been, there's a relatively small number of security tokens platforms have kind of received their regulatory authorization, but it's happening now more and more in the US, in the UK, yourselves, of course, and even over in the Far East. So, looking ahead, the big picture, the big ambition is that all of these silos become interoperable. Because that's where we really get the benefit. But I guess, the hurdles at the moment are, regulatory kind of cohesion, because each different jurisdiction has their own nuances. And so that's not completely viable now. So in terms of technology, can you tell us a bit about what technology you decided to use and how that plays into the bigger picture going forward? And what independent products are you looking at which will help tie all of these different silos together ultimately?
So the Stokr has a very interesting approach here, right? On one side, on the blockchain side, we started with Ethereum. Because Ethereum is a very interesting platform when you are trying to do a proof of concept level product, right? Mm-hmm. You see the POC on Ethereum, and if it works, you try to find what are the suitable blockchain platforms ideal for your project, right? That's what we did. We started with Ethereum. We have a lot of projects actually currently on Ethereum, but we also realized the limitations, and one of the biggest limitation is the gas fee, mm-hmm. right? And right now it's one of the biggest pain point, right? If you are buying shares worth of $100, you will pay $10 worth of gas fee, mm-hmm. and it's ridiculous, right? It's not solving; it's creating more problem.
Yeah.
So we integrated right now Liquid Networks Blockstream AMP. It's mm-hmm. a sidechain. So the Blockstream AMP was earlier used to be called as Liquid Securities Network. Mm-hmm. It's created on the sidechain of the existing Bitcoin layer one.
Okay.
And that's very interesting because Bitcoin source code is one of the most robust and I would say well-tested source code, right, in the entire blockchain ecosystem. And we rely, because Blockstream is also one of the biggest player in the ecosystem, and they developed that. And the infrastructure that they have created is also very interesting and very much useful for the security kind of financial assets. Settlement time is very fast because you can pay and you can receive on the Blockstream AMP with a matter of seconds. Transaction fees, it's less than, like, it's few cents, right? It's never more than $1. Mm-hmm. And this kind of things becomes very useful. Yeah. One very interesting thing, and that's actually also motivated us very much to integrate Blockstream AMP, is the element of confidential transaction. Like, imagine a transaction happening between Deutsche Börse Group and happening between New York Stock Exchange or Frankfurt Stock Exchange, between London Stock Exchange. Maybe those institutions does not want it to be done on a public Ethereum blockchain because, mm-hmm. Short sellers and others, they can actually predict, and there can be some kind of pump and dump things coming mm-hmm. in. So with this Blockstream AMP, you can do a confidential transactions. So you will only know something has moved, but you don't know what has been moved and who has moved to with whom.
Okay.
That's very unique.
Yeah.
Ethereum, to implement that, if you have to spend a lot of gas fees and it's not viable, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're also currently implementing Algorand integration on Stokr because we also feel Algorand has also a very interesting value proposition, and that can also have a very interesting market segment which we want to target. So blockchain side, we have a number of integrations, and I think we are only few platforms which have so many integrations and live, and you can use it. Like the Infinite Fleet offering that is currently happening on Stokr is on Liquid Blockstream AMP. We had the projects on Art ID, Parking Goes, and few other coming. There will be on Ethereum. So we have multiple variety of projects. And I think one very interesting question that you asked is, what is our strategy to create a little bit scalable model, or to make it frictionless, right? And there we found out, like, KYC is one of the biggest hurdle, right? If any project issuing on Stokr does a KYC on their own, that means an investor has to do KYC 10 times a year if they're investing 10 projects. And that's not required, right? So what Stokr wanted to create is like an Amazon kind of marketplace where you have only one account, one time KYC, and you can invest in as many projects as possible on the platform. So you don't have to do KYC for every investment. Right. And that creates a lot of scalable opportunity that investor doesn't have to do KYC or share data, and we don't have to share data with each project, right? we can have only an element that, okay, there is a centralized database. And once you're whitelisted, you can, buy any of the tokens, or you can also do a P2P trade. Like, let's say, somebody who has bought some stocks on Stokr, and you just do a settlement on your own, on your Telegram, and then you just settle. That's it.
Excellent.
And that's how I think we want to make it scalable much more, to reduce friction as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And so is the goal there that other security token platforms would also adopt that same layer, and then that helps with the interoperability? So
I would say it's very important, because at the end of the day, there are two layers of interoperable question we are talking here. One is the making KYC data shareable structure. So I think that should be a very, I would say, interesting goal that we have to achieve here, is with the secondary markets and primary issuance markets. There should be some kind of KYC sharing structures in place. I know this will be very hard from regulatory perspective, but there should be a will,
Yep.
There should be a business will to do that. And we need to do it in a proper way with proper encryption and everything. And the second, I think much more where we need to really see is what kind of assets these are going, right? And assets, what are the transparency documents that assets are giving, how this, interaction between the issuers and the companies is happening. And these two layers are very much important if you want this market to grow.
No, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, especially this KYC thing. I mean, and this has broader implications. And you do question, this has been, I know I've discussed it for 5 or 6 years, knowing that this would be a key feature. And, banks in general, the money, the cost and the repetition for separate financial institutions to repeat these processes is incredible. And, you would imagine that there is, or there should become, the incentive and the motivation for regulators to push this through. And hopefully, again, this technology is right to support that. So it's going to be an interesting space to see how that particular kind of vertical pans out. So look, we're getting quite short on time. So I know you went live late last year. Please tell us where the project's at, which listings you already have, and then a little bit about your kind of plans and roadmap for the year or so ahead.
So Stokr started in 2019, and the platform was launched in 2019. Because of COVID and everything, last year was projects were quite low. We had a lot of challenges, but right now we have around 7 projects at this point of time on the platform. Some are offering in public, some are in private, some are both mixed private and public. And our aim is to always bring the public offering in the market. We are currently managing around 70 million worth of assets, as I mentioned. So the volume is increasing and it's going in a very good positive direction. We have a very interesting Bitcoin mining project coming in the coming months. It will be announced and we are super excited for that actually. Also, Stokr is diversifying its asset, because ultimately our main aim is we want to create a marketplace where any kind of alternative financing assets can be made accessible. And in that direction, we started with the SME financing. That's what actually where we started from. And we created a very good instrument structure standardization on that layer. Where we are going right now is getting other kind of financial assets. Like we are partnered with Utopia. It's a Nordic-based music data company. And we will tokenize music rights also on the platform in this year. We're also having a lot of project financing coming in place. So big, I would say, power plant projects or, kind of sustainable development projects. They are also looking into Stokr, and the project financing will be coming more and more often on Stokr. We also partnered with a German-based company to tokenize rental income of real estate property in the German market. And this is also an alternative assets. So the ultimate vision of Stokr, and that's what we want to bring, like you as an investor, when you come and you're looking for alternative assets, you can create a diversified portfolio. Because diversification is a key of any kind of good investment portfolio, right? And that's what we want to give. It's you can buy a financial asset that's connected to a company, or kind of an asset that is connected to the rental income of a property or royalty rights of a music streaming royalty. And these kind of things are coming. And we are also now this year, I think one of our biggest, I would say, aim will be to partner up with a stronger exchange partner. And that includes both, we are looking into decentralized exchange market as well as centralized exchange market, because both are very relevant for the market to grow. Excellent,
very interesting. And just final part on that, in terms of what you're able to list, so would debt instruments be included in the options going forward as well?
So on Stokr right now, you can do hybrid. So we call it as a hybrid equity and hybrid debt. These are like kind of preferential shares, like Infinite Fleet has tokenized a preferential share instrument on the platform. We also have products which has a hybrid debt, which is kind of a participation right to a certain level. But where we really see it, I think, Paul, I really want to explain a little bit on this point, is we believe that when investors are investing, they want a recurring income. So whatever instrument we try to bring on the platform, we always consider that investors kind of get a recurring income. Like think of Celsius, right? You get every week kind of a recurring Bitcoin interest, right? And that's what the market needs, kind of an instrument which doesn't give a huge upside after 5 years or 10 years, but provides a recurring income on a quarterly basis or, biannual basis. And that kind of things we are trying to much more like when the investors are getting paid. And that's actually very key for us.
Okay. And just before we finish then, in terms of your existing users, what's the profile of them and how's that divided between kind of retail audience and more institutional audience?
So right now we have I would say 80% of on the platform are retail institutions, like retail investors right now. I will not say there are too many institutions like insurance companies, banks, and other these kind of players are not that prevalent on Stokr yet. But what we have is high net worth individual, family offices, private investors who are like angel investors or serial investors, and those people. And retail investors are also, coming. And I think last couple of months, we have seen a huge uptick in the French market. We have seen very interesting uptick from different European market. And we are quite excited because the retailer also now coming in. And the entire purpose of having Stokr as a brand, as a marketplace, is to provide access to the retail market.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Look, it's been really interesting to hear about that whole journey. Congratulations on getting this far. Last year was challenging, especially early stage companies. So it's great to see this out there because I know a lot of people working in this particular space have had to put a lot of time and effort in the background and be very patient as well when dealing with regulators. Can't move at the same speed as some other projects in the space. So congratulations there, and thank you for joining us and wish you every success in the coming years.
Thanks a lot, Paul, and happy to be here at Meet the Founder session. Thank you.
Thank you.